Welcome back to Askewed Reviews. And since we are so close to St. Patrick's Day, we are doing the entire Leprechaun series. So we are doing the 2000 film Leprechaun in the Hood. Here is your trivia question for today. At one point, the leprechaun is trapped in a safe. Who releases him from that prison? The answer will be at the end of this episode. So this film starts off in the past, assumedly sometime during the 70s, where two gentlemen are breaking into a hidden area that is either connected to a train or subway station. Within this hidden chamber, they find an odd-looking statue which resembles a leprechaun, and next to it, they find a pot of gold and other riches. One of the gentlemen, known as Mac Daddy, decides that he only wants one thing from this pile of riches, and that's a golden flute. Slug, on the other hand, begins collecting everything else, including a medallion that rests on the statue. Now, just like how the medallion worked in the last movie, this brings the leprechaun back to life. By the way, as a side note, even though there are some similarities, once again, this is another Leprechaun movie that is technically not connected to the rest. Anyway, getting back to the story, Slug is unfortunately taken out by the leprechaun, and this just leaves Mac Daddy by himself. After a bit of a struggle, Mac Daddy is eventually able to get the medallion back onto the leprechaun, which reverts him back to a statue. We then jump ahead to 20 years later. In this time, Mac Daddy Onassis has not only become a major crime boss, but is also the owner of one of the most lucrative record companies. It's around this time that we meet our main characters, a rap group consisting of Postmaster P, Stray Bullet, and Butch. Now, unfortunately for our group, they have not had much success in gaining success, so they decide to reach out to Mac Daddy Onassis to see if he can help them get on their way to stardom. Unfortunately, the two sides can't come to an agreement, and on their way out, Mac Daddy Onassis manages to insult the group as well. Oh, and by the way, I hope you noticed what Mac Daddy has as a decoration in the middle of his room there. So the boys make the poor decision of coming back at night and stealing whatever they can from Mac Daddy's place, including gold, a magical flute, and the medallion that was on the statue of the leprechaun. So this, of course, causes the leprechaun to be free once again. He then forces Mac Daddy to work for him and help him find his gold and his flute. So will the boys be able to get out of this situation and launch their rap star career, or will the leprechaun find them first and regain his riches? This movie was directed by Rob Spera. This was the last Leprechaun movie that Trimark Pictures distributed. This was also the first Leprechaun movie where the leprechaun does not end up being destroyed by the end of it. The filming of this movie was actually halted twice. Once due to a power outage, and the second time, I feel so bad, but Warwick Davis apparently was dealing with chronic flatulence. Ice-T originally took this role as his son was actually a huge fan of the franchise. In the end, though, he really enjoyed his experience and had a great time working with Warwick. The rapper Coolio actually makes a very brief cameo appearance in this movie during the sequence where they're at the church. The Leprechaun rap originally took place much earlier in the film, but once they realized that this would be the signature scene of the movie, they decided to make it the finale instead. This movie takes place and was filmed in California. The body count for this film is 10. This includes Slug, who is stabbed with an afro pick, the bartender, who is electrocuted with magical lightning, Jackie D, who is taken out by an illusory version of his ex, Chow, who was strangled and then dismembered, Miss Fontaine, who was also strangled, Mac Daddy's bodyguard, who got a magical hole blown through his chest, Reverend Hanson, who got a fist burst through his abdomen, Stray Bullet, who was forced to shoot himself, Butch, who was shot a few times, and Mac Daddy Onassis, who was also shot a few times and then had his chest blown out magically. So when it comes to the film Leprechaun in the Hood, this one was okay. It definitely still had its charm like the other ones, but like most of the ones in this series, I'm still going to give it a 2 out of 5. Now, as for the trivia question from the beginning of this episode, at one point the leprechaun is trapped in a safe. Who releases him from that prison? So the ones that set him free are his zombie fly girls. I specifically chose this trivia question because how often do you get to say zombie fly girls? I hope you enjoyed this episode of Askewed Reviews, and if you'd like to see a movie get a review, just mention it in the comments.